Okay, so hi everyone, and happy Saturday. I really appreciate everyone being here at least on the East Coast. It's a beautiful summer day. My name is Claudia Carco, and I'm the Assistant Dean of the English Language Institute at Westchester Community College in Valhalla, New York. I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar titled Motivating Students to Practice English with Rhythm and Rhyme. Today's presentation is being sponsored by the Joseph and Sophia Abeles Endowed Chair for English as a Second Language. Our speaker today is Jason R. Levine. Jason has more than 25 years of experience as an English teacher, teacher trainer, and materials writer. He has led Rhyme on Time student workshops and teacher training programs in countries all over the world based on the songs and videos he creates as Fluency MC. Originally from the US, Jason currently lives in Paris, France. In addition to doing Rhyme on Time, he teaches TOEIC and TOEFL preparation courses, publishes materials with Black Cat CIDEB, and works as an English specialist for the US Department of State. Stick, Stuck, Stuck, his music video to practice irregular verbs, has more than 50 million views across social media. Jason is currently creating fluency cards and Speak on Beat, a video practice program for young learners. Thank you, Jason, for being here today and sharing your expertise with us. Jason will take questions at the end of this presentation, but please feel free to write comments and questions in the chat at any point. Jason, please go ahead and take it away.
Claudia, thank you so much. And Andrea, thank you. And to Leslie Painter and everybody at Westchester Community College, I'm really thrilled to be here. And thank you for that introduction. It's a beautiful summer day where I am too, in Paris, originally from the East Coast, New York, New Jersey area. So I'm glad we're all having a sunny day. So yeah, if you have questions, comments, as Claudia said, please put them in the chat and keep the chat box moving throughout if you like, and then at the end, be happy to answer questions and respond to comments. So yeah, this is the title, motivating. Well, you can see here, motivating students to practice English with rhythm and rhyme. I highlighted the rhythm there. We're going to talk about rhyme, rhythm, and music generally, and then more specifically, rap music and how you can make your own raps and chants. Chant is a maybe less threatening word for most of us teachers than rap, but we're going to talk about how they overlap, and yeah, a lot of fun stuff. I hope you'll enjoy it. So my name is Jason, but I'm known more I think as Fluency MC. When people ask me what I do, I usually tell them I'm teacher, trainer, language explainer, high stress drainer, global knowledge entertainer, or something along those lines. I want to begin by just telling you what I primarily do, based in Paris, but I move around a lot. But the picture on the left is just a recent class that just finished for TOEFL in Paris at a university here. So I stick around for that, but the other picture is me doing a show at a school, mainly in France now, but I in the past I've went all around the world doing shows, and it's a lot of fun performing songs with students and at the middle school and high school levels, sometimes elementary and university levels. And I want to go back, tell you a little bit about how I got started with using music in English language teaching, and especially since I think you're all familiar with this part of the world. So when I started teaching, I did the CELTA in Manhattan with Leslie Painter, she and another trainer, and she is a big reason why I got so inspired to teach. I mean, I was already obviously taking the CELTA, so I kind of knew I was into it, but I didn't realize how into it I would become. And she has a lot to do with that. And that was in Manhattan. And then I started teaching at international schools. I worked with Leslie at an international school also. We were colleagues developing curriculum. And at schools like that and universities too, the students who came you can probably imagine very easily from different countries around the world. They were often really, optimistic about speaking English because, they weren't around other students with the same first language, right? They were mixed in the classroom. They're going to go out and do stuff in the United States where they'd be able to use English. But the majority of them came over with like, kind of grammar translation, English language learning experience. So they didn't have communication skills. They didn't have like the basic foundation they needed for that. And the problem was international schools, okay, but I started working more at universities where they were expected to very quickly be able to use English at a higher order level, like critical thinking skills in English. So in the classroom, we're doing communicative language teaching. So we're asking questions like, tell us about your culture, or what do you think of gun control? And meanwhile, the students didn't have, basic interpersonal communication skills. So this is what inspired me very early on uh, to feel like my job has to be building a base for this. Like there's no shortcut to critical thinking, even though a lot of people seem to think there could be. And so I put this picture on just to illustrate what I was thinking, right? I'm thinking about this bottom foundation, how I can build it. So quickly, and has to do with the CELTA program and Leslie Painter and others, I got into the lexical approach, right? So where chunks of language really seem to be that base, right? Forming a base with these collocations, right? So I think if I ask you to tell me what goes in, and then see if we get the chat box going, what do you think? I think probably, right? Even though there are other possibilities, these are pretty fixed expressions, right? Then I got really excited because at first thinking, oh, well, chunking, collocations, it's really just fixed expressions. And then when I realized, oh my goodness, even when they're not fixed, when it's more open, like there are more possibilities here. But I still think most of you will write, if you could, in the chat box, if the chat box is handy, what you think would probably go there. I took up time. She likes listening to, I know where to. So it took a long, exactly. So that's real to me, very fascinating that, native speakers are very advanced. Second language speakers usually agree on what would go there. And that means one thing, right? It's not that they're fixed expressions, it's that there's such high frequency word combinations. So just in case. So this is something I got right away from the lexical approach. And I really believed in it, and I still do to this day. But there was something missing. I was really let down by the lexical approach at the very end because what they convinced me, it was about chunking, about collocations, build this base, interpersonal communication. So I was asking, what do I do? What materials should I use? And basically what they said, and they did adapt it a little bit, but still to this day, not so much. Here are these exercises. Here are these little books with gap fills and, make and do and put in the delexicalized verbs and make the chunks and great chunks. But that wasn't enough. There's no way my students are going to remember just with worksheets. Moreover, doing a worksheet more than once, repetition with worksheets is not a natural activity. Until one day, I had an epiphany at a moment at a school in New Jersey where I was teaching, when I said something like, I don't remember exactly, but something like that. And a student said Coca-Cola. And I didn't know what happened. And the student started laughing. And this was a student who, at the time, I had groups of Korean nurses training to be nurses in the States. Some of them going back needing English anyway. And this was one of these nurses, and she hardly ever spoke in class. She seemed, how we say, oh, shy student. But was she shy, or she just didn't have English quickly to to produce. And in this moment, she produced something very quickly, but I didn't understand what happened. And then finally, I realized, oh, at the time, right, this was the slogan for the Coca-Cola company. So my student, when I said always, she said Coca-Cola, this, emergent language was a collocation that she had stored here because she had heard it so many times or seen it so many times or both. And then if I don't know if any of you remember this slogan, but it was a jingle, always Coca-Cola. So it was music. There was music to it. And we all know how companies use not only repeating expressions, but also with music to have them stick in our heads. So when that happened, I realized, wait a second, of course, and I'd used music before in class, but I hadn't used it as much for this idea of repetition of collocations, of getting chunks of language to stick in students' heads. I did it more for, discussion or cultural comparison. Again, more higher level, higher order thinking, critical thinking, which my students, most of them, couldn't do. So I knew what I had to do. I had to be like Nike, Coca-Cola. I had to get my students to get enough exposure to the collocations they needed. But of course, I wasn't Nike or Coca-Cola. I didn't have that kind of I didn't have that kind of couldn't hold my students' attention that way. And the other thing was I had them in the classroom. So if know a lot about acquisition of language compared to learning, conscious versus subconscious and crashing and all of that, like my student did not, consciously try to learn this language, right? The opposite, right? She was just in front of the TV, always Coca-Cola. On the bus, always Coca-Cola. So I realized I needed to do something to help my students out of class, which also made sense to me because I had them in class for a very short time, and in class, I still wanted to do communicative activities. I didn't want to repeat collocations over and over again. That made no sense. If you look at Bloom's taxonomy again, you can see a little word down here, repeat. And of course, Bloom wasn't talking about second language acquisition or even first language acquisition. But for me, at least, and this is the very basic, bare bones, 1950s Bloom's taxonomy for cognitive objectives. But for me, it all started to click. It's repetition, just the way, the multiplication table. You need to repeat it to get it here to then do higher order thinking in mathematics. It's the same thing with a second language. So I thought about this word practice. And the reason I thought about it, and this is actually much later, jumping to not so long ago. So to put this in context, I started teaching in 1998. 10 years later, I had this idea of making my own songs. Before that, I was doing a lot of collocation games and things. So I would say like 6 or 7 years ago, I started thinking, wait a second, what is practice? We talk about practice a lot. Students say, I need more practice. And we say, oh, don't worry, you need to practice more. And I think in general, when we're using that word, certainly when students say I need more practice, they're usually talking about, conversation practice. And also us, I think, you need more situations to speak English. But what's interesting is if you look at the definition of practice, you see this word. I was really into the repeating idea, repetitive exposure to comprehensible input, like the always Coca-Cola thing. And then I thought, wait a second, when you practice a musical instrument, right, that's not the performance, that's the repetition. When you practice tennis, that's, repetition. That's not the tennis match. So what are my students doing to practice, to really repeat? And this is where we have a little problem. And I think the big problem here is we don't think about, most people, that is, don't think about learning a language. And this could actually be learning anything. So I think for me, studying something and practicing something in music, they're all important components, but where should the balance be? So the big problem, like my students who are coming to New York from other countries, they've done a lot of studying and thought they could just jump to using English, right? As if you could, uh, study how to play the guitar and then jump to a concert, right? Like, you know, um, and I think one of the problems when I did the Celta with Leslie Painter, there was drilling in communicative language teaching. Not like, thank God, not like the audiolingual method, but I think as it went on, there was even more this idea of drilling, repetition. This is bad. And at least I think so. It's kind of a baby with the bathwater situation, right? Like, moving into communicative language teaching is great, but to decide that we don't need repetition or sort of forget about repetition doesn't make any sense. Just going back to the sports analogy or the music analogy, or anything, any skill you need to build. And not to digress, because I will get into this, I think a big problem is for how many, decades, centuries, really, we've been thinking about learning a language not to use it every day. It's like computer science versus using a computer. So it kind of makes sense that we haven't thought about it as a skill, the way we think about music and sports as a skill. But anyway, that's for another day. So I thought, okay, I've got to be the practice guy, not because I like repetition, but because I know that that's what's necessary to get my students where they can use English. And this is the formula that I follow. And you can plug in anything here: tennis, saxophone, TikTok dance. So I think that's pretty self-explanatory. So when people ask me what do you feel fluency is, this is usually what I tell them. And I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit because that was, really just the background to where we're going. What I want to talk about, music and rhythm and rhyme. So the other big problem, I mentioned the problem of thinking you can study a language and then use it, is that unless you're a child, a small child, usually you don't feel it's natural to repeat things. I mentioned, repeating a make or do worksheet. But what about like a magazine article? You could find like the best, most interesting, right level magazine article if you're an English learner with all sorts of great collocations in it. It doesn't matter how interesting it is, you're not going to read it 9 times. I mean, just because it's not natural to read an article 9 times. So what do we naturally like to repeat? Right? This is what I've been obsessed with for years. I made games because we like to repeat games. But then after the always Coca-Cola moment, I realized there's something else that's even better. So if I say hello to my students in France, as long as they're not too young or too old, uh, I say, what do you say? They say hello. And then I say, but if I say hello, so we'll test that on you guys in the chat. If I say hello, do you think of something? Thank you, Alice. Uh, I'm goodbye. Yeah. Hello. Hi. Hello. Hello. There's like when I'm thank you. So somebody else is Daniela. I almost said you're as old as me. Maybe you're not. For me, it was always hello. It's a Lionel Richie. Is it me you're looking for? At some point along the line, I had to change it to Adele because I was saying hello and everyone was going, it's me. And I didn't know what they're talking about. Just like the always Coca-Cola thing because I didn't listen to pop music. But now I've got younger kids, they don't know the Adele song. So I'm going to have to find something else. So if you have an idea, let me know. But actually, this is what I do with the young kids. I say, if I say baby, what do you say? And they're like, what? And I say, but if I say baby, right, that does it. So yeah, this is my plan B that works every time if they don't know the Adele song. Um, so if you don't know Baby Shark, yeah, Jenny knows Baby Shark. Okay, very good. So we are into the music part. So I created this song in 2007, which is about 9, 10 years after I started teaching. And the idea was to kind of chunk the parts of the verb, the participles and the base form, not because we say I took taken the bus, but because if you have it stored up there, it's easier to use in an activity. And it worked, especially because they were doing it out of class, right? So I had this video of me doing it in class, but I'm not the rapping teacher. I'm a teacher like everybody else. The difference is that I make songs so that at home or on the bus, on the street, they can get the repetition, right? I mentioned earlier, class time is too precious to do any kind of repetition. And also, we don't usually listen to songs and sing them with classmates, especially unless you're a little kid. So I made this song. I was actually on this program, France Got Talent, a few years ago. So if you have an idea for making materials and you think it'll never it'll never go anywhere, stick with it because it really it can happen. Um, with some talent and a lot of luck. Luck is always important too. So this question is a big one, and we could turn on the microphones and talk about it for a long time. But I want to make sure, and this is why I'm not stopping to talk with you, that we have a recording that other people, because I think 90 people registered for this webinar. So I want to make sure we have something, really tight that they can watch, and then at the end we can talk. So if you want to put your comments in the chat, that's great. I want to focus on one thing. There's so many things, and here it is, and it should look familiar if you remember, figure it out or listen to music. Always Coca-Cola, hello, it's me, right? This is another way to look at fluency, right? If you kind of know what to say next, right? If you've got those chunks, then you're not stopping to translate, you're not stopping to think, you're comfortable. And again, I think that has to do with the frequency, right? The frequency of exposure, and if you're relaxed and enjoying it, if it's meaningful practice. And get rhythm, cadence, great. And all of the things you're saying, actually, and here's rhythm. Oh, actually, here's rhyme. Rhythm's coming. So it's not just the repetition, right? Repetition is a big part, but there's something special about music. So, I've had great success with games because of the repetition, but rhyme, right? If I say I don't think it's good, we'll find another. Even when I look at this, I think solution usually. But if I say I don't think it's okay, we'll find another, right? So rhyme, brain chunks, a rhyme is a collocation, or that's maybe the wrong word. Rhyme is a chunk. It's chunking the sounds, same sounds chunked together, easier for our brain to acquire and to encode it. And then we have rhythm. Ooh, onomatopoeia. I want to talk about that. Yeah, I want to go back through the chat. I guess that's our moderator's job plus me at the end to kind of look at back and see. But yeah, that would be great to talk about that. So with rhythm is chunking too, no? Everywhere in the world where I put this up and I say boom, bap, boom, I get the same response. It doesn't matter what country, what culture, what type of music, somebody put it in, unless you're going to be the first one. Somebody's going to be a troublemaker now that I said that. I usually say that. You're going to say something crazy. Thank you, Lynn, for not doing something crazy here. That's amazing, right? Just incredible to me. So rhythm and rhyme both have this chunking ability. Yeah, I want to talk about the difference with kids and adults and why it's different, because the differences that we hear about a lot, kids are sponges, the neurology changes are, to me, not as important as other differences that we can actually control. So that's the most interesting thing to talk about for me, is the whole kid versus adult thing with music and repetition. Here's another one we can talk about forever, but I don't want to do that again. I want to put forth what I think are three really important things that people don't always think of. One, we've talked about. So if you want a quick review, The first one here is what we've been talking about, except melody, and that's for the sake of time. So if you're thinking, wait a second, always Coca-Cola and hello, it's me, is it really rhythm? Melody also gets in our head. But rhyme and rhythm, I'll talk about melody again in a few minutes, why I don't usually focus on that as much. Spaced repetition. I have a feeling some of you have used Duolingo, and probably all of you know what it is, and other apps like that. And if you've used it, something similar, you know that it's based on spaced repetition, right? You get a word list or a quiz, and then you do it again. There's repetition, but it's not right away, right? They give it back to you, in a few hours or the next day, right? Well, think about songs. Unless you're a child, and here we go, Jenny, with the child adult thing. A child who's 3 years old wants to hear the same song 7 times in a row, right? Or they want to hear the same story 4 times, and you're going crazy as an adult because that's not how you are learning language. They're learning their first language that way, and at that age, that's what they need. But it's not that we don't want to repeat songs, right? It's that we naturally repeat them at intervals, right? And in fact, that actually makes it better for adults because that's how we learn better, is through spaced repetition. The other thing is immersive reading. If you thought like I did when I first saw this term, that immersive reading is like curling up with a book for 5 hours because you're obsessed with it or something. That's not the term in linguistics. Immersive reading is something, I didn't know this term for years, even as I was, focusing so much on reading and listening at the same time. And not just with songs, I make stories, audiobook stuff with students, for students too. So, reading and listening together is such an amazing way to learn a language, especially a language like English. I'll talk about that more in a moment. So again, that idea of natural, it's natural to listen to a song at intervals. It's natural to want to read lyrics. It's not something like, oh, I'm doing this because I need to learn English, or, this is good for me or something. It's just something we do. So back to rhyme, to focus on, I think the most important thing about rhyme is certainly with English learning. If you learn a language like Spanish, for example, and you learn the letter E, which is A, right? You know that letter has that sound in every word, right? You come across the letter E, A, it's A, right? O is O. English, that is really not the case. Also French, so learning French here in France, we have lots of weird stuff like this, right? But I don't think any of your students, if you teach or if you know English language students, and that's another thing at the end when we chat, please let me know who you are and what you're doing as a teacher or somebody preparing to teach. I don't think any of your students, if you teach, ever say go, so, no, toe. But someone who doesn't know anything about English would be surprised, right? That TO has a oo sound. Why? Because they've seen and heard it so many times, right? That's it. And I think we can, if you need evidence of that, we can think of something like this, where, if every learner knows it's go and to, I think it's not the case that everyone knows it's go and through and to and though. But I would suggest that's just because they haven't seen and heard it together enough times. Um, and if it's a song, for example, and it's something, something go, something, something though, something, something to, something, something through, rhyme helps us to remember instead of thinking about, rules and exceptions in phonetics, which takes a lot of time and doesn't always work because you're kind of going under the microscope as opposed to just getting it naturally. When you have a student, it's a student says, how do you know how to pronounce though and through? I don't know, it just sounds right. It just looks right, right? That's what we want. And that comes, I think, from the exposure. And what about rhythm? Lots of things with rhythm that help us learn a language, but something else that's particular about English is the reduced reduced speech and connected speech, right? What I like to call the shrinking and linking, because I like to rhyme everything as much as possible. Um, so also a good way to teach the word shrink, which a lot of students don't know. But anyway, English, not every language has, crazy sound spelling issues, and not every language is stress time. In fact, I've never heard, maybe you can show me one. I've never heard of a stress time language that's as stress time as English, like not even close. So like if you say, oh, German is stress timed, not syllable timed. Yeah, but if you look at German compared to English, right, it's just totally different. So that's why I'm always showing the word stress and sentence stress this way, like in the title, all my lyrics, every chance I can get. So what's really interesting about rap, um, and again, rap chant, right? We'll talk about that, not melody so much, is that if I say this as natural, speech, right? Oral discourse, it's the rhythm of rap, the word stress and sentence stress has the same foundation as authentic pronunciation. But if I rap it, it would be the rhythm of rap, the word stress and sentence stress is the same foundation, it's authentic pronunciation. It follows the same pattern. On the other hand, melody, right, is a lot different because you could do the rhythm of rap, the word right stress, right? So what you find is songs that are more melodic are not always the best ways for students to really get the natural conversation patterns. So this is something I'm really interested in. And if you want to put it in the chat, if we were together and we had more time, we would definitely stop here and talk. But again, I'm not stressed about time. I'm exactly where I want to be to make sure we finish and talk. But if you feel like putting anything in the chat now about this, that would be fantastic. And I'll talk for a moment while you're doing that about something that I'm sure you're aware of, which is that pop songs, if you use them, are amazing for so many reasons, right? Uh, Students you can connect with what's happening in songs they enjoy or culture, talking about learning about the artist's backgrounds, bringing in videos that they're already made and are popular. So many cool things with pop songs. But there are also some disadvantages of using pop songs. And I don't think you'll be surprised by this list if you've used music in class. It's great to talk about dialect, hip hop, right? We're talking like serious dialect most of the time, which is important for the culture, right? So I love rap English. But back to New York, my students needed English for the pharmacy, right? For the TOEFL, for tests in class, whatever. So, and that foundation I was talking about, like I'm learning French. I definitely would prefer to have a foundation of standard French. What variety is not so important. But then on top of that, once I get that, okay, I'm going to learn, some dialect. Pop songs, right? Can't really control for that. Also, how frequent is the language, and is it what your students want to learn and need to learn if they're preparing for a test or preparing to go to the pharmacy? Cultural appropriateness, age, um, sometimes too hard to understand. The big one, by the way, I love what you're writing in the comments here. So anything that you really like there that you said or you see someone else saying, please, bring it into the chat afterwards. The big one for me is the stress patterns, and I already kind of mentioned this. But I think probably at least two or three of these songs just by looking at the lyrics, my guess. And another thing, if we had more time, so we're going to kind of zip through this. But some songs, right, they follow very similar stress patterns as what happens in conversation, and some don't. Now, I'm certainly not saying don't use a song if it's so different from how we speak. Absolutely not. But if we're talking about communications and chunks, it is worth thinking which songs are close or closer to oral discourse. So if you look here, maybe you'll see some of them are more true than others. So I'm going to skip right to this. So the red is where it's different, right? So I think to myself, what a wonderful world, right? But if you look at Lemon Tree, really cool song for English teaching, all that I can see is just another lemon. It really follows it, right? Um, or it's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me. Yeah, Lemon Tree is great. So Nina Simone, that's one that really follows. Who remembers this Tears for Fears song? Every syllable is stressed, right? Everybody wants to. So this is also, it depends on, who your students are. I've really had, my students in the States were majority were Japanese and Korean because I had a school for Japanese students, and then I worked at this program. We had all these Korean students, and then I come to France. Korean, Japanese, and French are three languages that are the most syllable time, right? So I have students who speak like this. Everybody wants to rule the world. So I mean, for me, I really, wanted songs, and that's why I started creating songs, and that's why in a few minutes we're going to shift to making your own songs, because when you make your own or chant something short, you can control for so many things, including the word stress and sentence stress. Look how Rihanna fixed the diamond issue. Like a diamond in the sky, right? But we got shine bright like a diamond. Right? She nailed the real stress. I said in a few moments, but it's actually right now. But before we start talking about how to do it, let's talk about the benefits. And then I know some of you, at least a couple of you, are thinking, there's no way I could write a chant, or I don't have time, I'm not good enough, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to show you it is so easy. You won't believe how easy it is. So one big one, right, is, and I just mentioned it, you have control over these things. And if you skip to the bottom, oh, not the bottom, actually, excuse me, the third one, I put it here, the awareness of suprasegmentals, the word sentence stress, intonation, etc., because you and the students are focusing on that, right? Where to put the stress in what you are creating, whether you're creating, I should say, from now on, when I talk about writing a chant, rap, or song, I'm thinking either you alone, you with your students, or just your students doing it with you, facilitating the activity. So it depends. Yeah, I mean, it's also just a really great way to get students together to collaborate on an activity. And the big one for me is the last one. If you can get them motivated to want to listen to what they created, and what they created is full of the language they need, whatever function it is, or if it's a test they're preparing for, right? If you can get that hook to get them to do it, and that's a big one, I understand. If they, I'm teaching high school students or university students, I'm going to get to that. I'm going to explain how I think it can work. So this is the very simple recipe, and I know we're recording, but I'm also happy to share this PowerPoint because we're going to get, I will just send it, and I'm happy if you guys receive it from your program, or however. You can also, I'll give you my email address. You can email me, I can send it to you. Anyway, I can send the PDF. So if I'm going too fast, you can go back. But basically, you don't start with a blank piece of paper and think, I'm going to write a song to teach English, right? You start with something you already have, whether it's in the unit of your textbook, it's in your syllabus, it's in your head, it's in a lesson you already made. And once you have that, and so what I have here, I'm going to give three examples. One is for young learners. where there's a textbook. I won't say which textbook it is because I'm not here to promote textbooks or but this one, like a lot, they already have functional language in the form of a dialogue, right? It starts to look like a dialogue. Oh, look at this, right? We've got the two roles and we've got some great functions. So, as always, my feeling is how are these great uh, chunks going to get in students' heads? It's not going to be by reading the dialogue a million times because that's boring, right? Creating their own dialogues, that's great, but are they ready to do that? What they really need first, I think, is more controlled practice. But writing a song from a dialogue makes a lot more sense, and it's really easy to do. So this example, it's sort of all already set up, right? Because it's in your book. So this is good for someone who's just starting out, who may not think like, oh, I don't know functional language or this kind of thing. Well, it's already in the book. Well, then it's try to find some two great tools. One's been around forever. A rhyming dictionary. I used to use the paper ones. Now they're online. If you know someone that writes poetry or writes songs and tells you they don't use a rhyming dictionary, they are lying to you. It's like a writer who doesn't says they never use a thesaurus or something, right? And now we're in an era with AI where something similar is going to start happening soon too with that, right? But you can also, I'll show you how to use rhyming dictionary online. ChatGPT, Gen AI, not just to help you, you can actually, and I have another thing about this, but I'll just tell you, you can imagine, you can take that functional language, throw it into ChatGPT, ask ChatGPT to make a dialogue rap, and then you can tweak it, or your students can tweak it, because you're never going to just take what it gave you. I mean, this is what's ridiculous, I think, this argument about AI, where you just say, "Oh, give me an essay here, teacher. Here's my essay," right? I mean, if you could always do something where students have to like think, is this what I want? Put it back, change it, blah, blah, blah. So wow, Gen AI is amazing for this activity. Near rhymes are fine. Do you see my little joke there? Rhymes and fine, right? The long I sound is so strong that it doesn't matter that it's not a perfect rhyme. And you don't even always need to rhyme. I'm going to show you. So that if their last excuse is, "Oh, I can't find rhymes," you don't always need to rhyme, just like a poem doesn't always have to rhyme. This is Rhyme Zone, which is the best and easiest one. It's free. It's just a web link. There's no advertising on it at all. No pop-ups. Um, and it's great for students to see too. I mean, what's a good example? Yeah, oh my God, the ED sound when it's voiceless, dressed. My French students, right, saying messed, dressed, stressed, right? But no, they rhyme with rest, which is the word that we enter here. Rhyming dictionaries, very cool. So this is what I did. That's that step where I said, look for rhyming words, near rhymes. Not difficult to do. And this is how you begin. And then you already can see something interesting, right? You've got the long O, hold, sold, goal, and then you've got co-note O. See, those don't rhyme, but they all go together. Hold, co-note, goal, right? Those would definitely work in a little chant or rap. Now, this is really important, the next thing. When I said this is easy to do, this is why it's easy. You don't write the whole song unless you want to, go for it. But I mean, I've been doing this professionally for years, so of course it's easier for me than it would be for you if you've never done it before. But I don't sit down and write a whole song, right? I start like one bar, or what we call in hip hop we call them bars, but a stanza, a rhyming stanza. I'll show you in a moment. And then marking word and sentence stress, dictionaries, Gen AI. This is one area where large language models are not so good and will hallucinate It's crazy. Sometimes it's really good, and then it'll just switch and like put the stress on the wrong place. So the dictionary is still best for that, like an audio dictionary. So cool if students are doing this. And this is where I told you I mentioned where older students or higher level students, this is where it gets, you can do this activity where they're writing something, not thinking about we're gonna sing as much as they're, practicing finding sounds that go together, rhythm that goes together. I've done it so many times with students at older students and higher levels, and I'll show you in a moment. But here, we're still on the kids. This is definitely young learners, obviously, and lower level, A1, A2. So 1 bar means, right? Hello, what's wrong? The pain is so strong. You can see 2 bars. Doctor, I don't feel good. What's the matter? What's wrong? My head really hurts. The pain is so strong. So whether it's you or the students or together that come up with that, that's a beginning. You already got something there. And you don't it doesn't have to be much longer than that. I went this far, and I'm just gonna flip, and I'm aware of the time. I need to be careful here. So I'm gonna go a little bit faster here. All right. So if you see here, when we get to here, there's no rhyme. Watch this. I'll just show you. I'm sorry to hear that. Is there anything else? Yes, I have a sore throat. That's too bad. You have a cold. What should I do? You should get some rest, and you should take this medicine. Thank you, doctor. You're the best. So no rhyme in this part. I also made it for a little bit higher level. So now we've got coat and cold, sprained an ankle. And I would wrap this with you, but I want to show you some other stuff. And we will do a little wrapping together at the end. The first one's kind of obvious, but it's also the one that doesn't work a lot. If you say, well, my students feel uncomfortable, or, but do we really usually sing songs together in a group? I think we sing songs together in a group with old friends, maybe in church, maybe after drinking a lot of alcohol. If we know the same song like for years and years, it's not usually, unless you're a kid, right? Unless you're in second grade, right? If you're like, well, my students don't feel comfortable singing together in class, I get that. But the other thing is, it's the after school, it's the out of school practice. If you can get this in a chant form, it doesn't even have to have music necessarily, and get them to practice it out of class. And maybe it's because they're going to do something in class with it, maybe not. So we don't have time to write one together, but I'm going to convince you in 2 minutes that we could, and you could do this activity yourself if you want to, and keep in touch with me and try it. So this one is kind of all ready for you to take it away. We've got the function. I've chosen some very, very important functional language, some grammar to focus on, and some collocations. And then what you see here, I've put illustrated here. So here's our modal verbs. And down here, these lexicalized verbs with collocations. So again, whether it's you or the students or both, could you find some rhymes now? For example, before I get to the example, I also wrote a chorus. So you can have the chorus if you want, and you can see there are these little speakers up here, and that's because there is music. I'll play this one. The other thing is, I don't know if I can share my sound. Let's try. And you can try it with me, and it's better anyway, and it sounds crazy. So if you want to try it with me, here we go. So if it sounds off because of Zoom, but this is the chorus I had in mind. Thank you, Andrew. What are your plans for the weekend? Are you going out or staying home? Are you getting together with friends? Or do you feel like being alone? What are you gonna do? Where are you gonna go? I'll be around if you wanna hang out. Give me a shout, just let me know. So the idea would be to take that. I can send you the music too. And then think of some rhymes. What could you do with this language or other language? Obviously, this is not everything you could use for this function of making plans. So, for example, I just took, here's 1 bar and 2 bars. You can use these if you want. This is a little nod to UK English since I'm so American English focused. I need to clean my flat and feed my friend's cat, or 2 bars. Uh, I'm going to go to the gym, then clean my flat. I might order some takeout. I need to feed my friend's cat. And I wanted to show you this. Cool. The timing is perfect. I'm going to go super fast now. Just if you thought, well, I want something that's not, going to see the doctor, and I want something that's not making plans. Those seem still like younger learners. I just finished this rap. You can just see the beginning of it. I made this workbook for TOEIC, and that's my language bank. So adjectives are green, nouns are blue. The next verse is verbs. And nouns, adverbs and adjectives, adverbs and verbs, and noun, like compound nouns. I wrote this with my students. So I said, go through this list. The list is very long. That's just a little part of it. What can you find for rhymes? So they just found, brief conversation, complete dedication, right? And then together we wrote the rap. Before we take questions, I want to remind you, when you relax and enjoy your time, it's easy to learn with rhythm and rhyme. And I want to try to rap together. It might be off, but turn your microphones on if you want. Even if it sounds crazy, we'll try it. So it goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. You'll learn without looking when you stop feeling stressed, having fun,
Learn
and
when you
learn
learn
is
is
when you
when
learn
you learn the best.
very good. And here's one more. Ready? English learners. Okay, ready?
Everywhere,
English learners everywhere. So
everywhere.
ever
Don't
forget,
ever
the more
forget.
you practice,
Practice,
the
the
better
better
you
you
get.
get.
The
The
better
better
you
you
get,
get,
the
the
further
further
you
you
go.
go.
Just relax,
Just
repeat,
relax,
remember,
repeat,
and
and
you'll
you'll
find
find
your flow.
your flow.
One of the really cool things about doing stuff online with students is the reason I say turn your microphones off is because it doesn't work together anyway. Plus, then students don't feel as nervous or shy, right? If your microphone is off, you're more likely to really go at it, get into it. So that's really it. I just want to remind you also of this. I hope you agree. What we learn with pleasure, we never forget. And finally, practice makes what?
Stronger.
Uh,
Stronger?
I like I like perfect. Well, I like perfect sometimes if perfect means like, accuracy. You want to be accurate. Like you want to really be accurate with tennis or piano, but not if it's stressful, right? Not if it's like, perfection. So I like this one, but I have another one. A friend of mine, a colleague in Poland, came up with this. Oh, that's good. That's the, sticking in your head. That's the permanence. That's what everything has been about today. The encoding of the language, and especially practice with music, right? So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'll say thank you again at the end. I want to just make sure you know you can easily find me if you search for Fluency MC in social media. And if you prefer, you can also email me. I email everybody back. So especially folks like you who come to webinars like this. And I would love to take questions and comments. And I know we only have 5 or 6 minutes, but I can stay a few minutes later, however you guys want to do it.
Thank you, Jason. I'm going to jump in there. Thank you so much on behalf of everyone here today. Hillary had a question earlier in the presentation. She said she's used songs in class, and
Okay.
she would love some advice on how to make the lesson around more production from these songs.
So if it's songs, Hillary, that are the pop songs, like songs that are already out there? Is Hillary there?
Hi, yes, I am. Sorry. Is it working? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear
Oh,
you
okay.
perfectly. Are you talking about songs like pop songs, like songs that are out there?
Yeah,
Oh,
yes. I've songs that are classic or
Yep.
well known
Perfect.
or whatever. And
Just wanted to make sure.
this has actually helped already.
Oh, good.
About how to make it more productive. But
Well,
I sometimes think we're just they like learning them, but then I'm not making them sing, and yeah.
but the question is, do you want to make them sing? So either a few
I
things
think I
about how
might.
old are they?
I
How old
teach
are they?
adult students currently.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if it's adults, here's the thing. I'm really glad you asked this because this is something that I talked about, but just a little bit. I'd really like to talk about it more because it's so important to me. Is, the idea that repetition with songs that gets the language in our heads is not, production is not necessary. Okay. I'm not saying that we don't want to, there's a lot of good reasons to produce the songs. So I'm gonna get to that. But when you think about it, how many songs do you know
A lot.
versus how many songs have you sung?
Yeah.
Do you know
Right.
what I mean? Like
Uh-huh.
you could, like if we're at karaoke, like you could. And that means you've got it in your head, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So the most important thing, if we're going to say what's most important, I think, is the students listening to it enough, enjoying it enough, getting it in their head so they've got that language, right, that they can now use in other situations. If the goal is like there's language in the song, the
Yeah.
conditional, whatever, okay, or collocations. So producing it, if they're an adult, just right, think about how often do we produce them?
Yeah.
So, or if they're producing them at home, like, in the shower or whatever, right? That's great too. Now, if with adults in class, unless I've got adults who are like, super relaxed and kind of eccentric and artists or performers, I don't really focus too much on that, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah. That's very helpful. And then actually, I said in my question that I remember these songs from German class from high school, and of course, they're just in my head, and I don't sing them. But if I can recite them or sing them, and I do know what the words mean, and
You've
it
got the
definitely
production. The
helps me
production's
recall
there.
the language. Yeah.
To me, the production is them at the pharmacy on the TOEIC,
Yeah.
talking to someone. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like
Gotcha.
it doesn't mean that we can't perform them, but there's got to be a reason. I think perform is the right word instead of production, because that's how it feels if you're an adult in a
Yes.
classroom. You know what I mean? So if
Yeah.
there's a reason to perform and they get into it, I think it's great. And it's the same thing when teachers say, "Well, I can't, Jason, I really like your stuff, but I can't use it." Oh, why not? I don't rap. That's always very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because the first teachers who got into my stuff, they never rapped a word. They just facilitated a lesson with it. They got the students to get into it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. No, I get it. Thank you so much.
oh,
I
sure.
love this.
Oh, thank you. Glad.
Lorraine has a question too about
Sure.
space repetition at intervals. She's asking
Okay.
how long an interval are you referring to? Is it overnight, after a few minutes, after the break?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, one of the reasons I like spaced repetition with songs is because it's natural. It's not like, you have to think, when do I, because even with Duolingo, I know some people, myself included, actually, I don't like the idea of like, just people deciding when I should see vocabulary again and do it again. So with songs, I mean, I think it just happens naturally, I think. So to be honest, I haven't really thought too much about timing with it. I know I've seen amazing results, not like data-driven results over the years with students that get really into one of my songs. Um, and they'll listen to it, if I ask them about it, oh yeah, I listen to it, a few times a week for a month, and reading the words at the same time, huge part of it. So the immersive reading with it, and they can remember. So I don't know. I don't really have a good answer for that. I guess if it's with I certainly don't know if it's like vocabulary lists like Duolingo does. But with songs, I just try to, I like it when students aren't thinking like I have to, listen to this song to improve my English. It's like the intrinsic motivation is they like the song.
Right.
And maybe a little bit of extrinsic motivation to like, I want to know it well to show my other students or the teacher, or maybe we're going to have a gap fill back to the production thing. Maybe not production, but maybe like a little quiz with gap fill. So they need to repeat it at home so they can try to remember, the lyrics the next day to put them in. So
Yeah, so
sorry,
maybe during the Clement, I always watch, are they excited? Do they want to do it again? You want to do it one more
Exactly.
time, kind of gauge
Exactly.
how they're
If you
reacting.
game and if you game it, I mean, that's the thing with adults I didn't mention. Because again, this is kind of if you like this, there's more sessions I could do to get into things. But one thing is like materials. So like if you game it with adults where like they have to do a gap fill, and you play it once and then they're like, play it again. Because I didn't get all of it. Oh, play it again. Anytime an adult says play it again, kids always want you to repeat it a million times.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
anytime you get a hook adult learners saying I want it again, and there's so many cool dictation exercises. I mean, gap fill is a dictation, and there's so many other types of creative, fun dictation activities you can do with music.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
And Jason,
Sure. Yes, Robert. Hello.
also, I mean, interesting about using for like content academic vocabulary, like the water cycle, evaporation, vaporization, condensation, precipitation, kinetic, humidity, and density.
Robert, I have a song called Water, and I have a video. But
Right on, man.
so I'm so excited that you have the same idea as me. I have a video. I have that song. And the hook goes like this. Do you know H2O? Do you know where it goes? Around the water cycle, H2O always flows. Evaporation, condensation. There's never a gap in the world circulation of water, something like that. Yeah. So yeah, I love it. I have so many TOEFL songs. TOEFL, I used to do so many things with TOEFL vocabulary.
I know, man.
So cool. So do it, man. Don't look at mine. Write your own, and then we can compare.
There's evaporation, vaporization, condensation, precipitation, density, and humidity are all
It's
connected.
awesome. You got it, man.
High air pressure, lower eye pressure, and the water cycle, my man. That's hip hop for you.
That's right. I think that's great. There's also what's the other one that people don't know that much about what leaves do? There's another Asian. I can't remember it now. Anyway, very cool, very cool. Other questions and comments? Alice needs to take a shower.
Alice. Oh, yeah.
I need to take a shower. We've gone over an hour. You've given us the power to chant about a flower. Ooh. Go, Alice.
That's not fair. She does have a singing background.
Oh, but I bet almost all of you could do that.
She is
Sorry,
fantastic,
I'm
though.
not trying to take away, throw shade on your talent there, but I mean, come on. I think so many of us underestimate, like, we grew up with rhyming books and rhyming songs. We can rhyme. It's in our nature.
Like
But yeah,
Muhammad
we have
Ali.
gone over. I mean, I'm sorry to go over. Guys, you have my email address. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to email. I'll go back to that slide. The other thing is, so Claudia and Andrea, if I send you the PDF,
Yes,
you can send it to
definitely.
whoever
Yes.
wants it. Because that activity with making plans, if you want to play around with that or another idea, then you can. I always like to build rhymes with teach. So if like you're doing a song and you send me what you've got and you want a little tweaking or whatever, but don't be shy about using Gen AI, a large language model like ChatGPT can be really good, and also good when ChatGPT does something and the students are like, "What? That's corny. That's not cool," and then they change it. That's a really great way to get them to see how to use ChatGPT as an actual, chat tool.
Thank you, Jason. This has been
Thanks for the nice
wonderful.
comments, guys.
Thank
I'm
you
glad
so much. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and have a great rest of your Saturday and weekend.
Thank you. You too, Claudia.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Float like a
everybody.
butterfly, sting like a bee, Jason, like Muhammad Ali.
The original.
Hmm?